Hi, welcome to the Pursuit of Truth. It's still the 27th of July 2018. I was just listening to Steve, is it HV or Steve V? It's a YouTube channel on, I was going to say on YouTube. It was very interesting. It was about logical fallacies. And it was interesting how my thoughts changed midway between when I was listening to him talk about that. So logical fallacies, go check out his video. It was his latest one. I think it was yesterday. And it's talking about how we sometimes argue without logic, basically, like ad hominem and what were the other examples. There was lots of different examples like this. And I left a comment saying, if we were taught this thing at school, then maybe that we wouldn't do these things in life. Are they human fallacies? Are they taught? Are they? Because a lot of things is because we're not taught the most important things. We're taught how to become workers. We're not taught how to become thinkers, which is a shame, really. Because I think we'd be a better species if we took it a bit more seriously, this education business. So at first I was thinking, yeah, that's good, having these things, because you hear, I'm sure even I do it, you hear on YouTube people arguing back and forward, and you can hear, once you know this list, you can hear people do this all the time, saying things without factual things. But then the example he was giving out was mentioning about fossils. If people deny that that there were dinosaurs or fossils or this, that and the other, but then the problem with logical fallacy is, what about when someone's lying? I don't know, is that considered a logical fallacy? Because you may not have a logical fallacy, but if your logic is based on a lie, that is a fallacy in itself, isn't it? And that's the biggest problem. Like, he was suggesting that he wasn't believing in the idea of fossils and things because he'd never seen them. And we know, like, in a lot of these museums, that, I thought that the London Museum had that dinosaur. I thought it was actual real dinosaur bones, to find out that it's not. It's actually a plaster cast or whatever. God knows whether the real bones actually really exist. But they don't mention that too often. But that's what I mean. So then I was thinking, well, one minute, what if these logical fallacies are here to keep us from questioning? Because then it's an easy way that you can attack someone, like flat earthers and paradigm shifters or conspiracy theorists or truthers, whatever you want to call us, to say that, oh, no, you're using logical fallacy, that's why you're coming up with that. The earth isn't flat because you're using a logical fallacy because you don't know enough information. So that's the only worry that I have, that it could be a way of gatekeeping or ring fencing our minds to not question anything, because that tends to be the biggest crime ever. It's the crime in 1984, isn't it? The questioning what is around you and the powers to be. And I think that's a big problem. So I'm undecided. I think the thing is it even logic? The word, the meaning, is a human concept. Is it a true concept, like truth? Is there such a thing? We have made up that concept to describe something, but does it actually really exist? Is there absolute truth? Because everyone has their own version of truth, but is there an absolute one? So that would, same with logic. Is there? If you follow the path of if actually everyone read that list and actually followed that path, would they get to the truth? Or is it that logic doesn't really exist and truth doesn't really exist per se, if you know what I'm trying to suggest? I mean, yeah, there are some truths that are 100%, but there are some truths that are based on how we understand things, like a tree. If I say that is a tree and you see a picture of a tree, then you'll say that I'm telling the absolute truth. But wait a minute, there's no such thing. We made up that word. It's a human concept that is called a tree. Unless God actually told us that that's a tree. If you believe in that, if you don't believe in God, then we made up that name. Who told us that that's a tree? In different cultures, different countries, they have different words for that object. So do you know what I'm trying to say? I think I've mentioned this previously before about the idea of truth and whether it actually really does exist or not. You can check it out on another podcast. But yeah, so I don't know whether I think it is a good thing, because at least, well, it's good in some ways. It's good. The most important thing is we get to as much truth as we possibly can with as much information that we have. Because yes, sometimes you can be saying something like, I'm sure I've done, I look back on my podcast, I'm sure there's lots of things that I've learned on the way, that I've said things previously that actually, were based on fallacies without me even knowing it. So yeah, it's always good, but the problem is I think it's one of those human nature things. It's difficult to have if we actually had a beep next to every time someone used a logical fallacy, I don't think we'd get through a sentence. Even I joked on his thing, the document he was reading out, which seemed to be very pro, fossils and dinosaurs and genetics and Darwin and etc. How much of that was based on, fallacy, logical fallacy. Anyway, that's enough for me. It was a great video. Check it out. It's always good to open your mind. I think that's the most important thing. Open your mind, be aware of everything around you and question everything and try and get to that truth, if there is such a thing, or as much as we possibly can. Take care, take it easy. God bless and peace.